What did Muhammad do wrong?
Shameful.
You should be ashamed of your government.
What did Muhammad
they
do wrong?
raped Iraqi men and women.
To mankind.
Killed the Quranic
He is the
Christians.
best example to mankind. What did he do wrong?
Your government is supporting
Shameful.
to
What
kill
did he
and
not
rape
do right?
Iraqi
So,
What did he not do right?
the brother asked, what did Muhammad do wrong?
What did he not do right as well?
He married a child,
Right? That was mature.
and I'll prove to you, ladies and
Mature,
gentlemen.
9 years old.
6-year-old. A 6-year-old.
No such thing as a mature
6-year-old.
Have sex with her.
When did he marry her?
When she was mature.
No.
Yes.
What's a nikah?
Nikah is when you get married.
When did that happen?
What's a
When did that
What's a
happen?
dukhul?
Consummation. When did that
So
happen?
when did dukhul happen?
When she was 9.
She was mature.
When she was 9.
Sexually mature.
9 years old.
Mentally unfit.
But don't run away from the topic. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. We talk about a nikah. That's when two people are engaged to get married. They're married, right? The consummation comes later.
So that's an argument of
1 second, let me
she
finish.
get married against
You're not
her
even
will?
listening to my point. How old was she according to the hadiths when she had her
you
nikah?
might know more than me. 6
Right.
years old, you said.
6 years old. That's, you see, 6 years old.
So what does that prove?
This is 1 second. This, so I'm giving you. This is recorded in Sahih al-Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari. Muslims believe that when both Sahih al-Muslim and Sahih al-Bukhari say something, it's reliable. So Muslims are saying that their prophet looked at a 6-year-old girl and said,
How do you know he looked at her?
and said,
How do you know he looked at her?
and said,
How do you know he looked at her? How do you know
and
he
said,
The Muslims,
How do you know you saw her?
they
And
have
said-
a narration. Before you take a
do you know
hadith
you saw her?
or from Abu Bakr or Muslim,
say
you
look
have
at
a
her?
narration. Not all sources.
I'm going to try and have a conversation with you.
I'm asking you again.
But if your Muslim brothers are just going to interrupt, our conversation is not going to go on.
Saying that, when you
Right, but I'm speaking to everyone because there are people at the back of there. You can hear me. You can hear me. You can hear me. Me and you are going to have a
How do you know
conversation.
it's true or not?
Conversation is
How
that
do
it
you
goes
prove a
backwards and
hadith is
forwards. The
true or
volume
not?
of my voice is irrelevant to whether we're having a
How do you do
conversation.
it?
Okay.
We're going to answer that, but let him answer.
So
How do you do it?
you're rattled, bro. You know why you're rattled?
Why? Why is he
I'll
right?
tell you why you're rattled.
Why is he right?
Because you're ashamed of your prophet.
I was a Christian just like
You're
you.
ashamed of your
Children.
prophet. Tell us what church you went to.
I went Orthodox.
What, sorry? Which church?
Which one? Which one?
Which church? Which church? Which church?
Church. Orthodox.
It doesn't even know which church he went to. Doesn't even know which
He's a
church he went
nominal
to.
Christian, not a believer.
It doesn't,
Learn
it
the
didn't,
difference,
yeah,
Muslims.
yeah.
Nominal Christians are not real Christians.
So, what
So,
are the ones that rape your
let me have this
children?
quick conversation with you.
No, they're not Christians.
So the nikah, let's be clear, a nikah is a marriage, I already know that, bro, is a marriage contract.
No.
And the hadith say
Which hadith?
that the marriage contract happened
hadith? And how
between
does-
Muhammad and
How does-
Aisha when Aisha was 6.
Where did you
Now
get
let
that?
me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. See, I'm trying not to shout. I'm trying not to shout, but I'm going to have to elevate my voice. I'm going to have to elevate my voice.
This Muslim is
So-
terrified of his fellow Muslims discovering
Be
the
fair.
truth.
Let him answer. Let him answer. Though. Let him answer. Be
Right.
fair.
So the nikah
No, don't lie.
happened
That's a lie.
when Muhammad
You're lying again.
was over 50 years old
Lying again.
and when Aisha was 6. So my question to you,
You're lying again.
show me any 6-year-old who has the mental capacity to freely enter into a marriage contract.
Miriam.
That's a fair question.
Mary with Joseph. How old was Mary with Joseph? How old was Mary with Joseph?
Irrelevant.
It doesn't say how old she was.
Irrelevant.
She was old enough
Irrelevant.
to marry.
Don't lie. We stick about it.
saying she
Allow
was
us.
married
Don't
against
suck
her
a
own
dick.
will.
Can a 6-year-old have the mental capacity to understand what she is entering into?
Ask your priest.
Until you acknowledge that yes, a 6-year-old can, and maybe 9-year-old physically and sexually, then
So listen to what the Muslim brother has just said.
What did he say, Bob?
The Muslim brother just said that I have to accept the idea that a 6-year-old child can be mature enough to consent to marriage. So wait 1 second.
Wait, 1 second.
Put your hand up.
1 second.
That's the claim. Wait 1 second. Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish. I listened to you. I listened to you.
Woman in Islam
I listened to you.
married off by her father. Yes? So her father gave the consent.
Abu Bakr gave the consent.
He gave the consent, not
Right.
her.
So let's just be clear about something. Firstly, the Muslim is accepting that she was 6 years old.
When the father got her married.
But in Islam, forced marriages are illegal. They are against the Sharia. He says no.
Why was it forced?
Now here's what the question is: why was it forced?
Why was it false?
Can you hear me, sister?
Where's the evidence?
The question is, I'm going to speak to you because I'm being shouted at.
Lie.
So the question is, why was it forced?
You are lying.
Because Aisha could not mentally cognate
That's a lie.
what a marriage was at 6 years old. She was a child.
She was playing with.
So let me ask all the Muslims,
Ask me.
put your hand up if you would marry your 6-year-old child to someone who was over 50 years old. Put your hand up. No hands. No hands. So let me ask the Christians. Put your hand up if you would marry a 6-year-old to a 50-year-old man. No hands. So everybody agrees that 6-year-old children cannot consent to marriage. But they are saying it was true for Aisha.
So a woman in
Because they're not
even if she's
priests
40
and
years
they're
old,
not Christians, we do
She has to give consent.
We've been condemning them for the past 5 minutes when
How do you know in that
meeting the same
Right.
Aisha did.
Let me address that point.
40-year-old woman in Islam, she needs her father's blessing and consent.
Let me address that point.
You're lying.
Can I address that point? Can I address that point?
You're lying.
So the Muslim brother says that in Islam, it is the father that marries the daughter. Fine,
Even if she's
I
40
accept that. Listen, but I know Islam enough to know that the daughter must also consent. The father can't force the daughter to marry. But a 6-year-old child does not have the mental capacity to accept a marriage. But Muslims are saying that that is exactly what Aisha did. So Muslims,
Why undermine Aisha?
why can you not do what your prophet did? Why, sir, will you not marry your 6-year-old child?
So why think so?
Why?
Aisha.
Because you know that a 6-year-old child does not have the mental capacity.
So you are looking down at Aisha.
And
as
if a
person, as an
father
individual.
agrees to a marriage of a 6-year-old, as Ali Dawah said that he would,
You asked me, would I allow my daughter to get married at 9? I'm saying the analogy is wrong because our teachers teach us the woman has to be sexually, mentally, and physically ready. That means if my daughter, if my daughter wants to menstruation, hold on, let me finish. If my daughter reached the age of menstruation at 9 years old, I would say you are ready. One second, you are ready to get married. However, it's forbidden for me to force her. If she says, Dad, I don't want to get married. All right, no, but say she does.
what child at 6 years old can turn around to her father, her mother, and her entire community and say, no,
So you are
I
looking
don't
down-
want to marry this old man.
So you are looking down at Aisha and you think she is not capable as a woman at 6 years old.
As a woman at 6, did you hear that?
Muslims, there is no such thing as a 6-year-old
There is
woman.
no such thing as a 6-year-old woman. That is what Islam has led you into.
Young woman.
This kind of idiocy, this kind of stupidity. To call a 6-year-old child a woman. A woman, he said. At 6, he said.
I come from a very uneducated background. Everything I say does not come from somewhere which was sourceful or anything. It's my personal opinion.
Fair enough.
And your personal opinion.
Let's just address one point though. Logically, the only way that you can defend what Muhammad did is to argue that Aisha was a woman. Agreed?
Why would you use the word
Do you agree with that?
A young woman.
Yeah, because if she wasn't, and then this we see again and again and again, that was a patently rational question. Did you understand the question? Did you understand the question? Did you understand the question? And yet the Muslim doesn't understand the question. And the reason why he doesn't understand the question is because if he understood the question, he would be forced to agree with the logic. So I'll state it again. Are you listening this time? That the only way that you can defend a 50-year-old man marrying a 6-year-old girl is to demonstrate that that 6-year-old girl is actually a woman. Is that logical?
Oh, I don't know what he said.
Because otherwise it's child rape.
Anytime you have sex with somebody who doesn't consent, it's wrong.
I can see this.
It's not though anyway. Did you hear what he said? I said that the only way you can defend it is to demonstrate that a 6-year-old girl is a woman, otherwise it's child rape. His reply was, but it's not though, is it? Do you see where Islam leads you? If you follow Islam, you have...
no rape as there was no intercourse. So I dismissed the rape. There was no intercourse.
There was intercourse at the age of 9 though.
Yes, so let's move on. So now we've demonstrated that Islam teaches the stupid idea that a child at 6 can consent to marriage, which is itself a good enough proof for you to see that Muhammad was a shameful person you should not follow. Let us move on to the act of consummation, the 9-year-old. I want any Muslim here to bring forward to me a 9-year-old who is ready to have sex.
What would you do with that?
Can you do it?
What would you do with her?
Not in this age and time.
What would you do with her? No,
Listen.
What would you do with her? Why are you asking for that?
I would have. Let me ask this. No, he's running away. But listen, listen, guys. He ran away and called me a dirty. But who has he actually just called a dirty? Muhammad. Because it was Muhammad that had sex with a 9-year-old child, not me. I have not had sex with a 9-year-old child. But in his mind, he heard that I don't know how, but he heard that that's maybe what I was considering. Because he said, what would you do with her? What would you do with her? And he was disgusted when he thought that I might have sex with a 9-year-old child. So in other words, he's disgusted with Muhammad for having sex with a 9-year-old child.
As he should be.
As he should be. So I applaud him for being disgusted at the thought. But what does that tell you? It tells you that your conscience, which was a gift from God, is what you should follow, not the hadiths that were made up by ignorant Bedouin Arabs who went on to invade and enslave, to rape and to desecrate around the entire world in the 7th century and justified it by putting their actions onto a man in the 7th century. Das Wort! Das Wort! Das Wort! Das Wort!
Answer the question of why did you ask for you to be bought a 9-year-old girl that is mature?
I will ask you that question because there isn't anyone anywhere who will bring a 9-year-old child and go on camera and say that this 9-year-old child is ready for sex.
So the father,
No one.
So the father does not know his child enough, number one, whether to understand. So you know Aisha better than the father, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, I am saying that I know
You're here,
as
he was there.
I know as a categorical fact that 9-year-old children are not ready for sex. But because of his religious sources, the hadiths, he is trying to argue that a 9-year-old was ready to have sex. That's where Islam takes you.
You agreed with me when you
We have something better.
You said categorically, you just agreed with me. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to prove him wrong again.
No, you agreed with me.
Because we know that in the past, everybody was just as ignorant. Christians in the past were also having sex with children.
Equally shameful.
Equally shameful. But even the Christians of the 5th century knew better than Muhammad in the 7th century, because the Christians of the 5th century raised the age of consent to 12.
So the Christians,
Still far too young. But if they knew in the 5th century that 9-year-olds were not ready for sex, what excuse did Muhammad have 200 years later? And bearing in mind that the hadiths were written 200 years after Muhammad, what excuse did the Muslims have to say 400 years after the Christians said at 12 that 400 years later they would say sex at 9 is okay? Every civilization, including Muslim societies today, are all raising the age of consent. Why? Because it is indisputable, uncontroversial to say that 9-year-olds can't have sex.
the Christians you are comparing with Muhammad that had sex with children as well. Did they A, have the father's consent? B, and was it rape?
Yes, let me just address that point. Because Muslims are right to point out to the Christians that Christians of centuries ago did what Muhammad did. They're right, they pointed out. But here's the difference. Because of the way that Christianity works, we Christians allow our moral system to be informed by the best learning of the time. So, as Christians have understood childhood development, we have raised the age of consent, and we can do that within the paradigm of our faith. But Muslims, one second, but Muslims, because they are pinned to the behavior of Muhammad, have no wiggle room. They cannot uncouple themselves from Muhammad's example. And here's the other point that I think is that you all need to consider.
At the time of the Prophet,
The Christians of yesteryear, we do not hold them up and say that we need to follow their example. But the Muslim is here defending marrying 6-year-olds and having sex with 9-year-olds because he is trying to defend Muhammad, who he holds up as an example.
for me. So you just said at the time of the Prophet, the age of consent was lower.
Yes,
Okay, so what makes that rape? What did the Prophet do wrong?
the age of consent was rape, and the reason why it was rape is because it was also rape back then.
Why was it rape? Who says it was?
Because a 9-year-old child is physically and biologically not ready to have children. The stupid, ignorant, backward, vile, disgusting attitude that says that if they can bleed, they can breed is a disgusting, backward attitude.
Father's consent is necessary.
And I have no shame in saying that.
Father's consent is necessary in Muslim.
And so is the child's consent.
Yeah, a 9-year-old child is really just a tiny little,
So how
not even a teenager, you know.
A child cannot consent to marriage.
Muslims, there is no such thing as a sexually mature 9-year-old.
There is no such thing. There is no such thing as a 6-year-old woman.
They don't even go through puberty.
A 6-year-old woman. Put your hand up if you've known a child at 6.
Child at 6, yeah.
Put your hand up if you've known a child at 6.
Everyone put your hands up.
Right.
All known 6-year-old.
Now keep your hand up if you think that that 6-year-old child was ready to get married.
Put your hand down. Put your hand down.
None.
Put your hand down.
Nobody.
No one.
So they admit that my argument is valid. He said yes.
She was ready to get married.
So
not
this-
intercourse.
Do you hear?
And the age of consent was a lot lower.
Yeah.
And categorically, women are not ready at that time.
So listen to what the Muslim said because of his example. A Muslim in London in the 21st century has just said that he knows a 6-year-old child ready to be married.
Now here, no, not here. What happened?
Back in the day.
Put your hand up.
Aisha was ready.
Back in the day, Aisha was.
So what has changed about 6-year-olds in the 7th century.
Categorically, you said categorically, girls are not ready to get married, and women are not ready to get married at 9, and girls are not ready to get married.
Yes, we stand by
You know
that.
what I mean, right?
Yeah, we categorize. Yeah.
Yeah, that's categorically.
So you're saying the categories have changed?
No, I'm saying you do not know Aisha better than her father.
Okay.
Better than the people at the time.
So the father.
Bro, guys, we're going to have to bring this to a close. We're just making the same points. But guys, in closing, what you have just heard in quick succession is one Muslim.
Furthermore, I'm going to let you speak to them because I feel like I wrapped it up when I spoke.
Okay, you finish. You make a final point, and then I'm going to make a final point.
I did.
Okay, so now I'm going to make a final point. Okay, so guys, think about what you just heard in quick succession. One Muslim who justified a jihad that happened for 18 years, killed 2 million people, and led to the Islamic slave trade of black Christians in South Sudan and the raping of black women in South Sudan. I hope you're listening, black Muslims. And then another Muslim immediately after defend the idea that 6-year-old children can be married and 9-year-old children can be ready for sex. These are the fruits of Islam. And Jesus said, you shall know them by their fruits.
And
By their fruits you shall know them. Jesus gave us a religion that allows our moral praxis because it is based on a virtue ethical system, to be informed by the best knowledge of the time, which means that Christians of yesteryear can do something that was wrong because they were ignorant of better information. I'll give you an example. I will give you an example. Christians of the industrial age had no understanding of ecosystems. They were ignorant and they did not understand the impact of industrialization on the environment. Today, because of our study of nature, we understand the impact of industrialization on ecosystems. And so Christians today can condemn the practices of Christians of yesteryear. And that is the same as with the marrying of children. But in Islam, they are pinned to Muhammad. They have to uphold Muhammad as the best example, and that is why you have just seen a Muslim in London saying that he knew a 6-year-old ready to be married. He is saying that he knows a 9-year-old child ready for sex. The difference is in our ethical systems. Muslims copy Muhammad in ethic and form. Christians copy Jesus in ethic alone. And so I invite you Muslims to a better religion, a better deen, a better way of life than Islam, to be a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Praise his name.
Amen.
Christos Anesti! Christos Anesti! It's nice talking to you. Okay, bro.
I just want to please put this in as well. I don't come from any educated background or anything.
That's totally fine.
And it's not something that I've been taught.
Okay.
It's not something that Muslims do. It's how I justify it for myself. And it's not what I said. It's not speaking for me.
Fair enough. What I would encourage you to do, bro, is to reflect on what you've heard today. And if you accept that my arguments are valid, when you go away and you go and research it for yourself, if you accept my arguments are valid, and I encourage you to look into childhood development, then you will see that you can't follow Muhammad.
I accept that you have had some valid points, and times change as well. Like then, now as well. That I accept, and you've had some very good points. So I feel like this conversation might carry on.
Okay, you're more than welcome to come back and talk to me again. It's a pleasure speaking to you. God bless. So guys, think about what you heard. Without any prompting, these were not right-wing actors. I didn't pay them, they're not stooges. But you heard one Muslim defend a jihad that killed 2 million Christians. 2 million Christians. And he wouldn't condemn it. Enslaved black Christians, and he wouldn't condemn it. That raped black Christians, and he wouldn't condemn it. If you cannot fight against that ideology, I curse your house. I spit on your feet, because you are a coward. And the Bible says that cowards go to hell. It's in Revelations, go and check it out. You Christians are morally obliged by our Lord Jesus Christ to oppose this ideology. That wimpy, virtue signaling, yellow-bellied, spineless kind of club Christianity that's middle class that we have in the West, that's conflict averse. You're the kind of Christian that allowed that jihad to happen against our brothers and sisters. And you need a slap around the face to wake up out of your fantasy and daydream. Christians, the liberal state will not help us. The United States will not help us. The UN will not help us. The EU will not help us. Russia will not help us. The only people that are going to help us are ourselves. Organize, train, mobilize, resist. This is the watchword that the church needs to have as our culture. We need to form networks of solidarity to join in the struggle of our brothers and sisters across the Middle East, across North Africa, across Sub-Saharan Africa, across communist North Korea, across communist China, in Buddhist Burma, where Christians are dying, where Christians are fighting. We need to support them in word and deed. And I want to stress, I advocate nothing illegal, but there are many legal options open to us. But we simply lack the imagination to explore those legal options. We simply lack the courage to explore those legal options. So explore them, learn what the law permits you to do, and start to organize yourselves accordingly. Christians, one final point. If you do not resist on your feet, you will learn to live on your knees.